Hello, everybody. Here we are, 4 o'clock on Friday. Robin is trying to get the Instagram up and running simultaneously, and we'll see.
Always something to do.
Oh, I think it worked.
Of course it'll work.
Okay. Hopefully you're on Instagram. Not that we have that many followers. We're going to get better with social media, but I'm Robin Galinsky.
And
this is Dr. Dennis Becker. And this is our live stream that we do once a week on Fridays at 4 o'clock. And today we've decided to talk about verbal aggression in sports, verbal and physical aggression in sports and at work. Is it helpful? Is it hurtful? It certainly is common at all levels, the little 3-year-olds all the way up through professional sports, and it can occur with parents, coaches, teachers, fellow team players, peers, all of the above. And that's what we're talking about in the next 30 minutes, unscripted, unedited.
As always. And aggression, by the way, is a form of manipulation, because that's what we talk about. We are in the field of manipulation. What a wonderful place to be, right? Gee whiz. But we're trying to help you with it. And that's why we wrote the book. And that's why we're here on podcast. That's why we see you every Friday at this time. We're helping you with manipulation so that you can control, not be manipulated. What you do when you're being manipulated in the moment of the manipulation, as it's happening, not later on. And that's what's so interesting about today's topic. How do you do that when it's in a sports arena? It happens in the office, it happens in your home, in your kitchen, in the car, wherever. It's a different
Not arena. I don't think you mean arena, because we're talking about all levels of sport.
Yeah.
But I will for full disclosure, Dennis is the sports expert, not me. However, I was raised by an All-American football player from Michigan State. So I was indoctrinated into somewhat of the culture, even though you're the player, Dennis, and the coach, right?
And
you've
as
done
an
both.
athlete, as Robin mentioned, I've been an athlete my whole life, and in all sorts of sports, which we'll probably get into as we go along. And I'm still athletic, if not an active athlete with the team any longer. I'm still very athletic. So I've had a lot of experience with this issue, and I'm really glad we're talking about it today, because more than ever, it has become an issue of prominence for players, parents, managers, the public, sponsors. It's become a real issue. And that's why we're happy to talk about it today, because it may be even influencing you in some way or another.
Or affecting your children.
As an athlete, or as a parent, or as a sponsor, or whatever. So that's why we're talking about it today. It's going to be directly related to manipulation, and probably we'll talk about some of the tactics and techniques that we've covered over the weeks, but that's where we're at.
So the thing is that what we want to talk about is how it happens, why it happens, but more importantly, how this has become normalized. This is the true danger of this, is that it's become accepted as normal, and it is not good. It is not a good thing for any person to be verbally or physically abused. So do we need to define abuse, Dennis?
Yeah, I want to also talk about normal. It's not only normal, but it's expected. Almost, no, not almost. It is encouraged.
Celebrated.
And it's celebrated in many sports. It's encouraged and celebrated and rewarded and punished if it doesn't happen.
Now, yeah, and I have to say, there's some pretty funny comedies. I'm thinking of the one Will Ferrell with Dodgeball, like where they really make fun of it, right?
Yeah.
And who doesn't want to hit somebody upside the head when they don't agree with them? I know I had that urge.
Well, in sports, you often get the opportunity to do just that.
Yes, and get paid handsomely for it.
Yeah, there's a whole other aspect to this. We're getting paid for it. So even money becomes a reason to become aggressive and manipulative in the sport. So it's something we really want to take a close look at. And I know you've been seeing it, those of you who are watching and listening. I know you've seen and heard about it in your community, perhaps with the Little League team, and certainly with the professional teams that are in and around your city. So we're talking about it because it's around, it's in the environment, and it influences everybody, let alone your manipulator. It may even influence you. So we think it's important enough to have that conversation today and give you some thoughts about it, if not some things to do about it.
Okay, so the motivation behind this is a lot of people think this is how you make. This is also, I think, I push back on this if you like. This is the world according to us, but I feel like this is a very American thing too. American style of get out there. Don't be look at the guys who've died on the football field or in military training because they were unable to speak up to have their human needs met, what for dehydration or whatever they were going through, and they dropped dead. And only then, when they dropped dead, did they say, "Oh, maybe we were too hard on them. Maybe we went too far." What do you think? You think if somebody drops dead, they've gone too far?
Mhm.
Where's the line? Today we're talking about where's that line? And it
Yeah, yeah.
starts so young. It starts so young because what happens is, that with parents, with sports, that I've even witnessed some of this, but not a whole lot because of the area where my children were raised was a different culture, a different mindset. But I've also born and raised in the Midwest where this, it's sports are much, much, much more prevalent. And I raised my kids in Jamaica Plain, Massachusetts, which is very, very different than the Midwest. But it starts really young with parents who have no problem um, having their child live their dreams or projecting onto their child that any reflection, if they drop the ball or they don't get it through the hoop or whatever the sport is, that it's a failure on the parents' part. So they have no problem standing up and yelling from the stands, but it could also be the parent of another kid on the team screaming at your kid.
Mhm.
And they've had all out brawls happen between parents. They've dragged them off, they've got arrested, they've got banned, they've got restraining orders.
Mhm.
But this is, and then the video goes right viral, and it's I don't know, Dennis, if you remember the cheerleader, the mom of the cheerleader a ways back who tried to poison the girl that was her friend, her daughter's competitor. So it's this whole mindset about win at all costs. Well,
Mhm.
we know winning at all costs is a manipulator mindset.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I'm going to push back a little bit because it's not just an American thing. I know we're speaking about it because we have most familiarity there, but you may recall, some of you who are watching and listening, perhaps you may recall that not that long ago, and even today, recently, but less recently, but years ago, every time there was what we call in the U.S. a soccer game, what they call usually a football game, every time there was a game, there was a brawl in the stands. Sometimes the stands came out and the fans came out of the stands onto the field. Sometimes the stands themselves fell down because there was such aggression and such confrontation taking place in the stands. So this is not strictly an American thing. It has to do a lot more with humanity.
Well, but
Culture,
that, Dennis,
I'll
is
agree with you.
more.
American culture may be a little bit more, uh,
Yeah, I
maybe.
don't I love it when you push back, by the way. I'm all over that. But I would say that the fans breaking out in a fight in the stands, the fans in the stands, is more of a equal without knowing their size and all that. That's more of I'm thinking more of the power dynamic, the power that a coach, a teacher has over the
Yeah,
the athlete or the child who's in
yeah,
the sport.
yeah.
That is where there is a lot of room for manipulation. And actually, as you were talking, it made me think of, and that's what I think we should focus on, because you got two 25-year-old guys on opposing teams slugging it out. And I'm not sure any of us feel that bad for them. I mean, they're just, let's face it, men between the ages of 17 and 30 are the cause of most physical violence in the world. So let's go, let's just bring it back to that exploitation, that manipulation. And what does the grooming process look like? Because, Dennis, y- now women's sports are really, really big, and there are a lot of females in sports, and we see things happening like the NASA thing in Michigan with the gymnasts who decided that his way of helping the gymnasts was to stick his hands in their vagina and massage their psoas and fix them, right? So he's rotting in jail now, as he should be. But there's great information out there about how he didn't just groom the gymnasts, he groomed their parents.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
But before
so
don't go too deep on that, because that's a
I
really
won't, but I want to talk about the grooming process in
I
sports.
want to pursue that with you, but I'm not going to leave this part about the fans in the stands. The fans in the stands are a manipulative target of the athletes, and most of all, the media and the coaches of the athletes who
Oh,
encourage that kind of thing and who will turn around the
oh,
stands and say, come on, come on. What they're asking
interesting.
is for the fans to, our word, now you get this, folks, to manipulate the players by encouraging them to be more aggressive. And
Ah, yes, that makes sense, Dennis, because it's marketing.
aggression is the part.
Marketing, marketing, marketing.
Okay, aggression is a part. Now, I'm not going to say of sports. Aggression is a part of many sports, physically confrontational kind of sports. Aggression, you don't see aggression the way we're talking about it in golf, for example. You don't see it in tennis,
Well,
really. I mean, there are a lot
more
of
subtle
sports.
and it's more
Aggression is a word that we have to apply very selectively here because it's not all sports and it's not all athletes and all managers and so forth. But
well,
aggression
that's physical
is what
aggression,
you're
Dennis, but
talking
there's
about.
also the verbal aggression.
Yes, it takes
The
many forms.
verbal is much more common.
It takes many forms, and it's the verbal part that happens with the. Now, this is the last thing I'll say. Then I can leave this with the fans in the stands. They don't have any power to be aggressive with the players like other players do or the coaches do. They don't have that power, but they are manipulated through the power of the word, the communication that they hear, that they see from other players, from the coaches, from the media. Media doesn't get away with this. We'll talk about that too.
Yeah,
Get away.
in the
Those
music.
those fans are as much targets and victims in some ways as some of the others that you're talking about. Let's leave it at that.
Yes, I agree. But what about this with the, you know, well, then there's the whole thing. Well, we just saw on the news. So we're in Florida, and we just saw on the news somebody who was running a soccer clinic for girls who took all this money from all these parents and then never did the soccer clinic, which brings me to, it's a little bit outside of direct verbal aggression, but the manipulation of, I'm going to make your kid a star. I'm going to make your kid a pro. Just give me your money. The whole and this also happens in the dance world too, where you have to buy super expensive costumes for your child to be on stage for 3 minutes, and then you got $100 sequined thing, and you put
Yeah.
your kids under all this pressure.
Yeah.
So there's all
Not
this pressure.
dancing. I'm going to move you from dancing to a very different kind of sport, which in a way is dancing, and that is hockey. Talk
Oh,
about aggression. Now, this
yes.
hockey is
And that's changed.
as a game. Now, wait a minute. As a game, hockey is an aggressive sport. There's a lot of forceful banging and so forth, but it's also a strategic sport. But it's largely a very aggressive sport. Now, here's my concern with hockey, and this is where the manipulative part really comes in. When players bang each other in any sport, you get bothered, and it makes you angry and so forth. As a human being, you want to have revenge. You want to do it back to the other person. Okay, in hockey, when that happens, when that mindset sets in between two players, they start punching, which is not part of the game. It's not part of the rules. They start punching and they're fighting, and the referees, who are supposed to be keeping everything plain and equal and this again, they stand by and watch the fight go on
But that's what I mean.
until one of them hits the ground.
But
What they
that's changed, hasn't it,
No,
Dennis?
wait a
I
minute,
don't
it
remember
hasn't.
that happening in the
No, it has
80s.
not changed. It has not
They
changed.
always let them fight
You still
until
see
someone
this.
dropped.
Now, what I'm saying is that the very fact that sport, this one particular sport I'm talking about now, hockey, allows that to occur as it's become a part of the game, it's become expected in the game, and sometimes fans boo When it doesn't happen in a game, this is part of the responsibility that needs to be taken by those who are the authorities over the hockey game and those referees who stand by and all of that stuff. So there's a manipulation of the fans, let alone the players, by, yeah, go ahead. I won't stop you until you knock them over. This sort of aggression is absolutely unnecessary, unheard of, but to an extent is expected because it's an aggressive sport. That's my point. Now, you talk about an aggressive sport. How about what's more aggressive than boxing? Okay.
Right, but we're talking about we're not evaluating the aggressiveness of every sport. We're talking about manipulative behavior of coaches and trainers and where the line is, where the boundary is between coaching someone to be better at their sport and exploiting them, manipulating them, controlling them.
That's what I'm talking about too. Where do these players, hockey players, or in
Well,
this case, boxers, where do they get that from? That comes from the coaching, the teaching, if you will, the training of the coaches and the others around them who are managers who are telling them to be that. Now, in some cases, it's part of the sport, the aggression, like boxing. It is an aggressive sport. But there are times when you see an aggressive sport, they go at it, and afterwards, what do? They hug and they congratulate each other and they thank each other. Prior to that, the manipulative behavior of the coaches and the trainers is go out there and tell them you're going to. That also gets the fans going, that puts the money into it. So the aggression happens maybe on the physical aggression on the part of the players, the athletes, but it starts with the coaches and the managers of those very players.
So the root of this is, I do believe you hit on it, is money. Because if we're not entertaining you, if you're not seeing blood and teeth flying, you're not going to feel like that the prices are ridiculous now. The $1,000 you maybe had to pay for a plane flight and Airbnb and all these things to stay there.
A ticket.
Well, the whole thing, right? It could be thousands of dollars. Is you need to be able to say, I was there. I saw him do that. But where does this end? Is my, this is, so it becomes, the manipulation is driven by, look, we got to give them a show. So you push harder. You're more aggressive as the coach. You're more aggressive as the owner of the team about, hey, we got to get some more action. This is boring. People don't want to watch this. How do we stir it up? How do we get the viral videos,
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you that it's part of it is driven by the revenue. But then where does it end? Because then as a society, we have to think this, zooming back now, big picture of the evolution of us as humans. There's no end in sight to this. It's just one upmanship, one upmanship, one upmanship.
There is an end in sight. There is an end in sight. And we're beginning to see it in sports. Let me give you an example. Those of you who are old enough, you're an old guy like me, you'll remember years ago, decades ago, sport, they say boxing, let's take basketball, which is supposed to be a non-contact sport. Okay, we all know there's a lot of contact in basketball. It's technically and if you touch a guy, you can get called a foul and so forth. But we know there's a lot of contact in sport. Okay, where does that come from? Some of it comes from the necessity of play the game in a particular way. Okay, but some of that comes from the coaches, like we were saying before. And some of you may remember a very famous coach from Indiana, I think he was from, Bobby Knight, was a coach had a very successful team, but he was so manipulative and aggressive of his players that in front of thousands of people in the arena, he would call them out, name and point, and push them around, manipulate their very behavior in front of the hometown fan. He was a very manipulative coach, successful, which is why they kept paying him big money.
So
years ago. We don't see those guys anymore. We don't see those in basketball.
I don't ever watch sports. I float by when it's on, but I've seen plenty of red face screaming and yelling on the TV.
Well, you take basketball. I'm talking about basketball right now. Basketball
doesn't matter.
It does matter. It has changed. Basketball is a sport that is changing. It still has some of the aggressiveness in it, but now those athletes who are in a game, the referees, call it much quicker, call it timeout. They say it's wrong. They'll throw you out of the game. That doesn't happen. Years ago, that didn't happen. It certainly doesn't happen in some other sports. And the coaches themselves are beginning to teach their kids, and a lot of them are kids, they're in their 19s, early 20s. They're teaching those guys how to mindset the game, how to win the game without having to punch somebody and so forth. That is changing, Robin, and changing.
Okay, I believe you. And, Ted Lasso, that show, is a good example of demonstrating. So Dennis is a coach. I'm a coach. We're communication coaches. Dennis has also coached me before in tennis. So Dennis is an excellent coach. In my opinion, we can define what excellent coaching is, because excellent coaching should be coaching that brings out the very best in you, the parts of you that you don't even know you don't even know you haven't even seen them yet. And this could be behavioral, or it could be, with the sport, the actual movement. But a good coach knows what to say, when to say it, and how much to say it. And when to say it is important, just as important as what to say. But this is demonstrated in Ted Lasso. If you haven't seen that series, it's awesome. But this is good coaching. Now, can you get results from fear, terror, fear of public humiliation?
Of course.
Yes, you
That's
can.
why in the past it's been so
and it's rewarded handsomely by our society, rewards it handsomely, and then it becomes very pervasive. And so parents think they're being a good parent by saying, "You're an idiot. What's wrong with you? Move, run," screaming and yelling at their kid. And then sure, you're going to get compliance and even performance and even, excelling, because they're so filled with terror at failing.
Yeah.
But you have to think about, what's the goal? Okay, what's the real goal here? Well, the goal of a manipulator is simply to control.
Get you do what I want you to do. What I think is, like a coach, what I think is best for you to do is what I'm going to get you to do, however it takes for me to do that. Now, to some extent, that's good coaching, because a person may just be lazy and you got to encourage them to be.
Well, okay, I got to stop you there. Pause, alarm.
Because I'm going to continue, but you stop.
Know what I'm going to say.
What?
A person just may be lazy. That is that right there, to me, is a mindset. That if you have this mindset, if you have this belief that this person is lazy, how are you going to treat them?
Okay, that's a good point.
Do you know that for a fact?
This is where I'm saying coaching. Now that's a big little word with a big connotation. Coaching in all kinds of things, everything from personal behavior to physical sports. Coaching, one of the most important things of being a successful coach, which was makes you successful, means that your people are successful. That's what makes you a successful
and often more successful than you.
That's absolutely right. And that's
a really good coach.
I'm saying to you that some of the best coaches I know these days are people who, and in the last, say, decade or 10 and a half or so, the best coaches who have had the best teams are the ones who have mindset in mind first. Look, physical prowess is important. You've got to have the skills. You got to be able to jump and run and whatever it is. You got to have that. You come in with that qualified. Now, how that coach develops you is, I'm suggesting, mindset is very, very important. How does that athlete learn? Now, we all learn as human beings.
How do you learn?
We learn by fear. Sometimes we learn by fear.
Well,
many coaches have used that as a manipulative tactic to get people to do things that they think are right.
Right. Well, and I'm arguing that that's not good.
Oh, of course it's not good. No.
But when you say how they learn, Dennis, this is right. How they learn, it's also that person, to be a really good coach, you have to have a deep understanding of what motivates that person.
Mm-hmm.
How they're motivated, because every person is different. And this helps you enormously, not just coaching people or leading, but parenting.
Mm-hmm.
How you can, and every parent alive knows, if you have more than one child, you can say the same sentence, the same inflection, the same way to each child. One child won't even hear it, doesn't even remember you saying it. The other child's life is defined by that statement because of their personality, what they bring.
And that's where a good coach becomes a good coach. You recognize that. I don't care what sport it is. It doesn't matter. Even if it's coaching people and presenting themselves as a better speaker. I don't care. When you're coaching, you find out, what does that person bring to the sport? What
Yes.
skills do they have? Then how do I develop muscle, brain, mind, physical, running? What is it? How do I do it? And you don't do it the same way with every person. The good coaches are the ones who know their individual
Yeah.
players and say, she learns different than she does.
Lasso.
And then is able to adapt to that learner, that athlete's, this athlete, which is different. So you bring the best out, and what do you know? All the good athletes come together, and you have a great team.
Yep.
That's where good coaching comes in. Now,
And there's growth.
manipulators. I'll just jump to this quickly, Robin. Manipulators are, in a sense, good coaches because they look for in you. They look for what do I get there? What if I do this? How if I say that? How does she react? What if I do if I do this? They take note of all the things that they see in you that you do, you don't do, your strengths, your areas of concern or weakness or fear or humiliation. And boom, that's where they bring a tactic to
Yes.
bear. That's
Yes.
why we're so concerned about helping you recognize the tactics.
The difference, be more discerning about the difference between these, and also please reflect on your own self as a parent, or as if you are a coach or whatever. Think about what you're doing and how you're doing it, because yes, you can get your results with manipulation and exploitation, but it's not right. It's not good to do that.
One of the worst things I see these days are these parents who come running out of the stands and they assault another player or the
Yes.
referee.
And what are they modeling for their children?
Of
Lack
course,
of
role model.
self-control. I mean, really, it's very sad to see that.
Yeah, it's
But
very.
the worst thing you can do, as we have 3 minutes left, the worst thing you can do is reward a behavior you don't want to see more of.
Yeah.
So if the parent gets excused, if the team kid the foul gets called off or whatever after
Yeah.
the bad behavior, you're going to get way more of that bad behavior.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. And this is why I'm so happy to say, as I mentioned earlier, that I see a significant change in sports. Yes, there's still a lot of aggression. Yes, there's still unnecessary. Yes, there's punishable aggression, but we're seeing more punishment. We're seeing less tolerance of it now than we did, say, 15, 20 years ago. There's still a long way to go, particularly there's an imbalance in male and female sports and different kind of sports. Yes, but it's in the right direction. And from looking at sports and aggression and manipulation to looking at you as the receptor of that. That's why Robin and I are here. We
I
want to
want to
help
add
you
one more
recognize.
thing before you wrap us up. I think you need to be very aware of how you're exploited with sports, as far as the exclusivity, the promises, and the sacrifices that you make. Olympics is a whole nother
Oh,
subject, but
yeah,
the sacrifices you make, whether you're the parent or the teacher or whatever, to get into this group at all costs, and then
mhm.
stay in there and tolerate things you shouldn't be tolerating.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to step back and say, no, it's not worth it, or no, this is inappropriate. And pop-ins as a parent, do not turn a blind eye. Do not turn your child over to a stranger without popping in and
Mhm.
randomly sampling the kind of communication that person is having with your child.
And it doesn't mean that if they're being nasty, that you have to be just as nasty back.
No, you have to remove your child, though, if you
That's the
see this
point of
stuff.
what we're talking about with manipulation. Sometimes you just got to get away. Like we say,
You have to,
get
and you can't
away.
talk them out of it.
Okay. Otherwise, you have to, at least in your experience with that coach and in your child or that your colleague's appearance, you've got to increase the awareness that this is not part of the sports. This is not something I need to be doing in order to be good at this sport. I need to be aware of what this is, and I need to be able to look at my own self and say, how do I deal with that? That's where manipulative techniques of self-protection come in. And that's why we're here every Friday for you, to
I was
help you.
just going to say, you got 30 seconds to wrap us up.
Well, you know what we're talking about today, and you can see we even got a
Don't
little
have to
bit
say.
more aggressive than normal.
It was fun.
But
I
we're
like the
delighted.
topic.
We're so glad that you're here because this is an important topic. And we can see with some of the items that are coming in on the chat, keep telling us what you think. Keep asking us questions. We'll talk about it more. This is not the last time we'll talk about this. We want to hear from you. So just contact us, outwitinrealtime.com. That's how you get in touch with us. And we'll be here again. If we don't see or hear from you before that, we'll be here for you again next Friday, every Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're here for you. The here is my
Facebook page, Outwitting the Manipulator, or LinkedIn page, Outwitting the Manipulator.
Yes, all those as well. I keep forgetting those. Thank you.
That's where they find it live.
That's Robin Galinsky, and I'm Dr. Dennis Becker. Thanks for being with us, and bye for now.